She was 82, lonely, wealthy, and still grieving the love she lost decades ago. Then, suddenly, out of nowhere, a 35-year-old man walks into her life, and everything changes. Neighbors whispered. Her daughter panicked, but Morgan didn't care. She married him anyway. Months later, she's gone. And in a shocking twist, she leaves him $7 million. But here's where it gets disturbing. Her own daughter tries to erase his name from everything, like he never existed. Until CCTV footage surfaces. And what it reveals will change the entire story. October 14th, 8:42 p.m. A quiet residential street. The camera is fixed, grainy, slight flicker. A figure appears at the edge of the frame. He doesn't rush, he doesn't hesitate. He just walks, straight toward the house. The porch light is already on, as if someone inside was expecting him. He stops at the door, raises his hand, knocks once, then waits, exactly 7 seconds. The door opens. We don't see her face, but we know who it is. Morgan Magarate, 82 years old. And this is the last confirmed footage of her alive. What happened inside that house would unravel a story no one saw coming, and a plan years in the making. The life she built. Morgan Magarate wasn't just another name in a quiet neighborhood. She was known, respected, careful. For over 3 decades, she lived alone in that same house, a house she once shared with her husband until he died when she was 50. After that, she never remarried, never dated, never even entertained the idea. Friends described her as disciplined, routine-driven, predictable. Every morning at 6:30, she watered her plants. At 9 o'clock, she read the newspaper by the window. At exactly 12:15, she had lunch. Same chair, same table, same silence. But there was one person who mattered more than anything. Her daughter, Alice, the only family she had left. And for years, it stayed that way. Until something changed, something unexpected. At the age of 82, Morgan fell in love. And that's when everything started to shift. The man no one expected. His name was David Michael, 35 years old, no stable job history, no long-term address, and no clear past. He appeared suddenly, like he had always been there, just out of sight. Neighbors first noticed him walking alongside Morgan in the evenings. At first, people assumed he was a caregiver, then a distant relative. But within weeks, he wasn't just visiting. He was staying, sleeping over, living there. And then came the announcement. Morgan was getting married, at 82, to a man less than half her age. The reaction was immediate. Confusion, concern, suspicion. But Morgan didn't care. For the first time in decades, she looked happy. Or at least, that's what it seemed. But behind that quiet smile, something else was unfolding. Something no one noticed. Not yet. The first signs. It started small, almost invisible. Tiny changes in routine. Morgan stopped attending her weekly community meetings. She missed her doctor's appointment for the first time in 12 years. Her phone calls became shorter, less frequent. And when she did speak, there was always a pause, as if someone else was in the room, listening. Alice noticed it first. Her mother sounded different, distant, controlled. Then came the financial changes. Large withdrawals, unusual transfers, accounts being closed, assets being moved, quietly, systematically, and always
with David nearby. But when Alice confronted her, Morgan shut her down immediately. No explanation, no discussion, just one sentence. "I know what I'm doing." That was the moment everything changed, because Alice knew her mother didn't make mistakes. So if something was wrong, it wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. And that meant someone was pulling the strings. The isolation. Within 3 months of the marriage, Morgan was completely cut off. Neighbors stopped seeing her alone. Friends stopped hearing from her. Even Alice, she was no longer welcome in the house. The locks were changed. Security cameras were installed. New ones, facing every angle of the property. And David was always watching, always present, always controlling access. But here's what made it worse. Morgan didn't resist, at least not publicly. She defended him, protected him, even praised him, which made people question everything. Was she manipulated, or was she choosing this? That question would become central to the investigation later, because the truth was far more complicated. The plan beneath the surface. It didn't happen overnight. It was gradual.
Careful. Precise. David didn't rush. He didn't need to. He studied her habits, her routines, her weaknesses, her loneliness. And then he filled the gaps. He became everything she was missing. Companionship, attention, affection, control. But behind that, there was something colder, more calculated. Because while Morgan was falling in love, David was building something else. A path leading to one thing. Her estate. $7 million. That was the value. And David knew it. Before anyone else did. Before even Morgan's own daughter realized just how much was at stake. The evidence begins to surface. It started with phone records. Alice managed to access call logs through a shared family account. What she found didn't make sense. Multiple late-night calls, numbers not saved, durations under 30 seconds, and always after Morgan had supposedly gone to sleep. Then came the bank statements, large transfers, but not to David, not directly, to shell accounts, third-party names, untraceable recipients. And that's when Alice did something critical. She contacted a private investigator. Because this wasn't just suspicious anymore, it was strategic. And the deeper they looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't a spontaneous relationship. It was a setup. CCTV footage, the pattern. The investigator pulled footage from nearby homes, street cameras, traffic intersections. What they found changed everything. David had been in the area long before he met Morgan. Weeks, possibly months, seen walking past her house at different times of day, studying, observing, waiting. Then one clip stood out. A week before their first meeting, David is seen talking to someone outside a cafe. A woman, unidentified. They exchange something, a small envelope, and then they part ways. That woman was never found, but her presence raised a question. Was David working alone, or was this bigger? The confrontation builds. Alice couldn't stay silent anymore. She went to the house, unannounced, demanding answers. The cameras captured everything. She knocks, hard, again. No response. Then the door opens. David stands there, calm, almost amused. Alice pushes past him, calls out for her mother. No response. She searches the house, room by room, until she finds her, sitting in the living room, still, quiet,
unmoving, alive, but distant. Alice tries to speak to her, but Morgan doesn't answer, doesn't react, doesn't even look at her. And in that moment, Alice realizes something terrifying. Her mother isn't just being controlled, she's already gone. The final days. After that confrontation, everything accelerated. Morgan updated her will, removed Alice completely, transferred full control to David. $7 million, property, assets, everything. Signed, notarized, finalized. And then, 3 days later, Morgan was dead. Cause of death? Natural. At least, that's what the report said. No signs of struggle, no immediate red flags, just an older woman who passed away peacefully in her home. But Alice didn't believe it, and neither did the investigator, because the timing was too perfect. The exposure. The case was reopened, quietly, carefully. Toxicology reports were re-examined, and this time something showed up. Trace substances, not lethal on their own, but enough to sedate, to weaken, to control. Administered over time.
Small doses, undetectable in isolation, but together, devastating. And then came the final piece, a deleted message recovered from David's phone. One sentence, sent the night before Morgan died. "It's done. Transfer tomorrow." That was it. That was the break. Because it proved intent. It proved planning. It proved everything. The arrest. David was taken into custody 2 weeks later. No resistance, no denial, just silence. Cold, empty, calculated. But even then, he didn't reveal everything, because investigators still couldn't identify the woman from the cafe or the full network behind the transfers, which meant the story wasn't over, not even close. The twist. Months later, Alice receives a letter, no return address. Inside, a single photograph, printed, grainy, CCTV still. It shows Morgan, alive, weeks before her death, sitting at a table, across from someone. Not David, another person, face partially visible. And underneath the photo, 3 words, "You missed this." That image was never part of the investigation, never logged, never seen, which meant one thing: someone else was watching, someone who knew the truth and chose to stay hidden. Final reflection. Morgan Margaret thought she found love at 82, a second chance, a new beginning. But what she really found was someone who had been watching her long before she ever noticed him, studying her, learning her, waiting. And when the moment came, he stepped in, played his role perfectly until there was nothing left to take. No one knows if Morgan ever realized the truth, if there was a moment right before the end when everything became clear. But one thing is certain: this wasn't just a crime of opportunity, it was a plan, a long one, and maybe not even a finished one, because somewhere, out there, is the person behind that photograph, still unseen, still unknown, still watching.